Well, peace be unto you, and God's amazing grace be multiplied in each and every one of your lives. Welcome once again to another Nebo experience. That's right. Well, we believe that three things are going to happen. You're going to see God's plan for your life. You're going to hear his voice with clarity, and you're going to feel his presence more closely. Listen, thank you so very much for all of you that connect with us tonight for our Wednesday Refuel, where this is our time, of course, where we gather around the Word of God and study the Word of God. But our format tonight is slightly different. And I am so deeply honored and I am so deeply humbled that you allow us to come into your space during this particular time. There are so many other pastors and preachers and teachers all across the length and breadth of this country that are literally on tonight. But you take the time to watch and to tune in. And so, listen, I am deeply honored. I am deeply humbled. I do not take it for granted. We serve an amazing God, and he's worthy of our praise. Usually, on our Wednesday Refuel, of course, I'm normally teaching the Word of God line upon line, precept upon precept. And, of course, you know, we've been studying this entire year, the book of Proverbs. And we'll continue that. Probably we'll start back on it on next month. But tonight, for our Refuel, I am so excited about what's about to take place. Our format is slightly different. And so, of course, I want you to do several things for me right before we get started. I want you to, of course, give us some hearts. I want you to share. I want you to share, text, tag, and tell at least 5 of your contacts. And one of the simplest ways to do it is really to just type their name in the comment section, and they should get an alert as to what we're doing here at Mount Nebo, because I believe that what we're doing tonight over into next week is going to be a blessing to you. And of course, it'll be a blessing to others that you know. And so, of course, we all know we started on Sunday with something that was absolutely incredible, something that has blessed so many people. We've gotten so many comments as it relates to what happened on Sunday. This month, nationally, is known as Mental Wellness Awareness Month. And so, of course, our worship service on Sunday was really centered around mental wellness, bringing awareness to mental wellness, mental illness, mental instability. And so we decided that we would continue on tonight. And of course, I have 2 ladies with me on tonight that's going to be sharing with me in just a few moments. I'm going to introduce them. One of them you know, and the other one you may not know, but you will definitely get to know her after tonight. I'm so excited because on Sunday, Miss Shanti Brooks, who is one of Mount Nebo's own, she helped me preach on Sunday, if you will, and I told her information was absolutely incredible because it allowed me to deal with the spiritual aspect of mental health, if you will, or mental toughness is what I like to call it. And she gave us some exciting and wonderful information from the clinical side. And then my responsibility and my assignment was to share with you from the spiritual side. Of course, we shared from you Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. I won't get into it tonight, but you might want to go back and look at it because it'll certainly be a blessing to your life. And so we have someone else here tonight. I'm going to introduce them, and then we're going to jump right into it. So, of course, Mrs. Shanti Brooks, let me just give you some information about both of them. She is a licensed professional counselor who has worked in the mental health field for 18 years. Wow. During this time, she has worked with children, adults, and veterans. She was the director of a mental health facility until transitioning to her current role, working in an integrated primary care setting with homeless and underserved individuals. And so, of course, we want to welcome our very own Mrs. Shanti Brooks. And with us tonight is a accomplished author. I think she has about 4 books out now. And she brought 2 of them with her tonight that, of course, y'all know I like to push anybody that's doing anything that I believe in. I push it. I think this is what your first book. That's my first. This is her first book. It's entitled 7, Purposeful Healing and New Beginnings. Miss Ziza McMillan. And let me give you some information about her. She is a graduate of Mercer University with a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership. And she has a master's degree in human resources development. She is a, there it is, 4-time published author and mental health wellness coach. Wow. Her passion is to bring awareness to mental health issues and provide as much assistance to her community while helping to break the stigma, which is one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, by helping to break the stigma attached to mental health. And so this is her first book entitled 7. And then she has a wonderful package here. I think this is the last one.
This is the most recent.
This is the most recent. And it is called Mind Your Mental Wellness. And it is a book and a workbook. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that after we finish. But there are 3 things that we're going to discuss tonight. Number 1, we're going to talk about the stigma and myths that are centered around mental health. Number 2, the difference between situational depression and clinical depression. That's going to be very, very interesting. And then, of course, y'all know I'm principle driven. We got to give you some resources and some strategies, because y'all know I tell you all the time, there's no need, for me getting all this information without being instructed on what I need to do or how I need to deal with whatever I'm dealing with. I've said so many times to our church that, ministry has to be relevant. And, one of the most powerful lessons of sermons that could ever be preached, I never forget when I had the one opportunity to meet Dr. Frederick Price. He says that if your message does not have a how-to, you've missed it. And so, that's what we're here to do tonight. After we talk about the stigmas and myths and the difference between situational and depression and clinical depression, they're going to give you some resources and some strategies. And I am so excited to have these professionals, because I told y'all Sunday, man, my assignment is to teach you the Bible. I can give you the spiritual, but the clinical side of it, that's their responsibility. They've been gifted. They've been anointed to do that. And so we're going to start this conversation with our very own Mrs. Shanti Claybrooks. I'm going to turn it over to her, and let's welcome her. And if you, real quick, we have some microphones set. If you can't hear, just let me know in the chat session, and we'll make sure that we get them adjusted. So, Mrs. Shanti, I'm going to give it to you, and we just have this conversation.
All right. Well, thank you, Pastor. So glad to be with you all tonight. Good evening. We're excited to come and discuss some of the topics that Pastor shared, especially helping you to really decrease that stigma that's associated with mental health, and especially in African-American community. So we're going to share some stories, and it's kind of going to be a conversation that we have here at the table. And then we will allow some time at the end if you all have any questions or anything that you want to put in the chat. We want to make sure we leave time to be able to answer any questions that you all may have regarding what we discussed today. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually going to start it off because we have this phenomenal woman here who has a story, who has experienced life. Mm-hmm. And she has had lived experience with some of the things that we're going to talk about, mainly with depression. So I kind of want to turn it over to Ziza so that she could share her... Ziza, okay. Mm-hmm. Ziza, so that she could share a little bit about her story and tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Pastor, for having me.
Yes,
thank you,
welcome.
Shanti. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm super excited to talk to you about mental wellness. It's a passion of mine again. And Pastor said he speaks from the spiritual. Shanti speaks from the clinical, and I speak from the personal, because this has been a journey of mine since I was 16. When I was 16 years old, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And so that is the clinical term for it. We'll talk a little bit more about the clinical versus the situational later. But when I talk about my journey with mental health, I try to tell people to kind of shift their thought process, right? There's a stigma around mental health that keeps people from saying, no, I'm okay, and there's nothing wrong, but I'm going to tell you tonight that it's okay not to be okay. Wow. So a little bit about myself. I lost my mom about 10 years ago. April 6th made 10 years. Right before that, her baby sister passed away in October from cancer. That November, I miscarried my only daughter. And then less than 5 months away, my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer. So you have a 5 month span of just getting hit left and right. And so if you're already dealing with, depression or mental issues, then that will definitely take a spiral. You'll take a turn for the worse. I hate to say worse, but it starts to spiral because there's so much on you, and you trigger those depression, the anxiety, the stress. And so I wrote my first book, which is 7 Purposeful Healing and New Beginnings. So 7 is completion.
Wow.
And through this book, there's so many examples of 7. I was 34 when my mom passed away. 3 plus 4 is 7. There's so many examples like that. But I wrote this book because I went through a really hard time when my mother passed away and when I lost my only daughter. I have 3 sons. And so our last baby was a girl. And in my second trimester, I lost her. And I went into a very deep depression. And I stopped taking my medication the way I was supposed to. It was just, everything was so overwhelming. But I found myself in a very dark place. It took me a minute to find a therapist that would help me. And just so you know, I'm a proponent of therapy, right? We don't like to ask for help, but I'm living proof that talking to someone can really help you in managing whatever mental health issues or even physical that you're dealing with, because what most people don't know is the mental health aspect of it affects your physical. So I like to say your brain is the motherboard, right? You can have a heart transplant, you can have a liver transplant, but you cannot transplant your brain. It's just not possible. So if you're not taking care of it, it'll trigger some things. The stress of it all, you'll start feeling pains that you didn't even know you had. And so I had to make a conscious effort to seek help. When I was, in the midst of it, I was going to the doctor and they said, if you don't do something different, you are going to die. You're going to have you're on the verge of a nervous breakdown, because I was holding all this stuff in. The grief of the loss I was feeling, it was just too much. It was so overwhelming. It got so bad that I even thought about what nobody wants to talk about is suicide. People say, oh, just pray. But I want to tell you, faith without works is dead.
Right.
So if you're if you're praying, right, and you're not doing anything to go along with it, you can't just sit there and say, I'm going to pray this away. That's not how this works.
Right.
So you have to put forth that effort. If you're asking God to give you the strength to get through whatever circumstance, you have to take a step too. He takes one step, you take one step, he takes 2. And so I had to tell myself, I hit rock bottom. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do. My husband was suffering, my children were suffering, because I was in just this dark place. And so I asked God for help, and he said, take a step, and I'll take those steps with you. And so I had to muster up the energy to make that phone call.
Wow.
I had to muster up the energy to say, okay, I need help. I can't do this by myself. And so I went through a couple different therapists, and they just weren't working. You have to find the one that will take their time with you and give you the tools that you need, not just prescribe you a pill. Give you the tools you need to take one day at a time to get to be the better version of yourself. I'm not going to say that this goes away. This does not go away. People take medication for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and there's this stigma about taking medicine for mental health, like, oh, you're crazy.
Right.
You have to take this. There's something wrong with you. I get people telling me all the time, you don't look like you deal with depression. Well, what does that look like?
Wow.
How do you look like you have high blood pressure? You can't see what somebody's going through just by looking at them. And so I had to make a conscious effort to manage it. And by managing it, I had to, okay, so I told Shanti, I can't see. I have to put my glasses on as soon as I get out the bed.
You and me both.
If I don't put them, I can't see. So the first thing I do before I brush my teeth in the morning, I reach for my glasses. And when I reach for my glasses, there's a water bottle and there's a medicine bottle. I put my glasses on so I know I'm taking the right medicine, because you just don't want to be taking any old thing. I don't want to take a vitamin knowing I need to be taking, my medication. So I put my glasses on. I get that bottle of water, and then I get the medicine that I have to take. And that is the very first thing that I do in the morning. That is how I have to manage my mental wellness.
Wow.
And my doctor always said, it's up to you. Nobody's going to manage it for you.
That's right.
No one's going to force you
That's right.
to take your medication. No one's going to force you to get out of bed. You have to make a conscious effort. And so it was very difficult losing my mom. I still, you lose people all the time.
Right.
My grief is not any different than anybody else's grief.
Right.
You deal with the grief the way you need to deal
That's
with
right.
it. And losing a mother and a daughter back to back, it almost took me out. And so I encourage people to really look inside themselves and figure out what that thing is that's putting that heaviness on you, and then figure out who I can talk to, right? What steps, or even who I can talk to get the proper steps, because sometimes you just don't know where to begin. And so when I wrote Mind Your Mental Wellness, it comes with a journal, and the very first thing in there is write a letter to yourself. Write a letter to yourself, forgiving yourself for whatever you're dealing with. Write a letter to yourself saying, hey, this is how I feel. I don't know what to do. And as you're writing, things come to mind. You'll trigger a thought, or you'll trigger an instance in your life, and that is where it begins. I always say writing things down. It's a powerful tool because you can refer back to it.
Right.
So that's a little bit about me, and I talked about the fact that, I have clinical depression. There's nothing I can do about it but pray and take my medicine, and then take it one day at a time, because it's something that you have to manage. But that is the clinical piece of it. So I'm going to send it back over to Shanti, and she can tell you. Yeah.
What I want to kind of piggyback off of that before we continue, because I think something that you said is so critical and key, because people have this false sense of understanding when it comes to faith.
Yes.
We think that just because we trusting God so much that we don't have to put in the work.
Right.
And I think you said something that was so critical. And I think it, even on the clinical and spiritual side, this whole myth around, well, I'm just going to pray and I'm going to flush my medicine down the toilet. No. Faith is about, God's going to take care of your end, but you got to do what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if it requires you taking medicine, then that's you putting in the work that you're supposed to put in. I mean, we trust God, but we take our medicine as well.
Absolutely.
And so with that being said, there's a question in the chat that says, can you talk about the impact of not taking your the impact that not taking your medicine will have on you? Because some people, again, think that they don't have to take medicine because of the way it makes them feel.
Right.
And so they stop taking it. So can we just kind of discuss that real quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, from a personal perspective, it is a huge impact. So if I know what my triggers are, I know, what makes me sad, what makes me happy, what the stress that we tend to take on other people's problems. And my mom used to say, don't put too much on your plate because you're going to eat it, And so when you commit to something, because of how I was raised, if you tell someone you're going to do something, if you keep putting things on your plate and you can't handle it anymore, you're full.
Right.
You feel heavy, you feel bloated, for lack of better words. And so the stress of putting too much on my plate is a trigger for me. So what I would do is I would take my medicine for a year or two faithfully, and then there would be something that happened. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling better, I don't need this anymore. I've not had an episode in a very long time. I haven't had a panic attack since years after my mom passed away. So I don't need this medicine anymore. But as soon as I stopped taking it, within a week of not taking it, the fatigue sets in.
Yes.
Not being able to get out of the bed, the appetite changes, you know. For either you're eating too much, you're stress eating, or you're not getting the nourishment you need because you're sleeping all day because you just don't have the energy to get up. And so it's funny, my husband will say, you haven't taken your medicine.
Wow.
I can see a shift.
Wow.
He could tell the
Wow.
difference if I had gone too long without taking my medicine. And he asked, something's off.
Right.
You know, you're sleeping a lot, you're tired, even though, you know, you get to rest at night, but you're restless. You're not having a restful sleep. You know, when's the last time you took your medicine? And I'm like, do I really have to tell you? I haven't gotten it filled in like 3 months. And he's like, are you kidding me? You know? And so he's like, you need to call your doctor because you need to get this refilled. I have, Pastor, flushed it down the toilet
Wow.
because I thought,
You didn't need
okay,
it
I didn't need
anymore.
it. I'm feeling better. You know, I've managed it this long without having any episodes. Let me just flush this. I'm good. I prayed,
Right,
you know, and I
right,
did
right.
what I was supposed to do.
Yes.
And then it hits you, bam, you know. You can't do that.
No.
And you can't just stop taking medicine without consulting to your
Right.
doctor.
Yes.
You don't know what that's going to trigger.
Right.
Some of the medication that they give you for depression is for seizures, you know, and you just can't stop taking seizure medicine.
Wow.
So depending on, you know, what prescriptions you take, and trust me, it wasn't easy, you know, finding what worked for me.
It's a trial and error.
It's a trial and
Everyone's
error.
different.
So I took some medicine and made me feel like a zombie. Then we tried something else, and I was bouncing off of walls, and I couldn't come down off of it, or I had really bad headaches because of how strong it was. And so it took quite a while to get that combination
Right.
that worked for
Wow.
me.
And it's kind of like with therapy, as you mentioned too.
Mm.
It takes some time to find the right therapist. It's the same thing with the medication. The bottle says it will work for people, but everybody's chemical makeup is different. Yes, we have certain genes, certain things that are
Right.
similar, but we don't know how a medication is going to respond until you take that medication. So even with the medications, you can't give up that first time. It's that trial and error. You may have to try 2 or 3 before they find the cocktail that works best for your makeup and for your body. And to go along with what you said about not wanting to take it, that is common. But I tell patients, the reason why you're feeling better is because the medication is doing what it's supposed to do. It's working.
Yeah,
It's working.
right,
right.
And when you stop, you see the effects of it not working. So it's treating what it's supposed to treat.
Absolutely.
Same thing with like diabetes and high blood pressure and hypertension. It's the same thing. When you take the medication, it's effective and it's working for you and you see improvement. But there's things that go along with that too, which we'll talk about in the strategies. But there's things you have to do, lifestyle changes, like take the medication, get yourself out of bed. There's things that you have to put in place. And again, we'll say that for a little bit more of the strategies. And maybe we could talk a little bit about, really quick, about the difference between situational depression as well as clinical depression. But before I forget, because Pastor said some great stuff, you guys said a lot of great things about God and the praying it out and the praying it out. A lot of times I tell patients, God is your source,
Yep.
but
That's
He
right.
provides resources
There you go.
all
There you go.
around
Yes.
you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So therapy,
Yes.
medications, doctors,
Yes.
they're all resources that are put in place. And when you come into an office or you make that first call, He's walking right there with you. And that's, you're utilizing those resources that He's giving you. Because, again, you have to have that faith, but you have to do the work as well.
Absolutely.
And that's a part of that.
Absolutely.
And just to piggyback off of that, somebody said in the chat here, I'm looking at it, prayer works, but God will send you where He wants you.
There we
Absolutely.
go.
And I mean, you know,
Amen.
we're not telling you not to pray,
Yeah.
but after you pray, God's gonna always give you direction.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Y'all hear me teach that all the time. You gotta sit still long enough so that God can speak to you, because again, He has resources, you know, like Miss McMillan, like Miss Claiborne, that will help you after you pray. And so that was so, that was key. That was, and I hope we're hearing that. You know, yeah, pray, because I talked about praying on Sunday. Yeah, you pray, but you got to do something after you pray. Yeah, yeah. So let's get into what you just mentioned a few
Yes.
minutes ago about situational depression and clinical depression, because I'm interested in that one.
So,
Yeah,
and so there's a lot of misconception about just mental health as a whole that, if I have to have mental health, I'm crazy or there's something wrong with me or, will I be on medication forever? Will I go through therapy forever? What will that look like for me? And understanding the difference between, especially when it comes to depression, situational versus clinical. So situational depression is going to be where, as she mentioned, some of those life events. So a divorce, a change moving to a state, loss of job, this pandemic, life situations or crises that may take place. And so from that, usually with situational depression, within 90 days, you start to see the event happening. You may start to see yourself having more crying spells, maybe not wanting to do the things you used to do. You're having trouble with your sleep. You're seeing some irritability. Just mood changes in your mood, just depressed and not motivated to do anything. But that depression is based off of that situation that you've been experiencing. So if you're grieving that loved one. But usually with situational depression, you get through it. So as you get through that grief or that loss, or you're no longer unemployed, you start to feel better. Right. You've adjusted to being divorced or in a new setting. Your moods start to improve. So it's more situational during that time. Now, it still could be helpful to get therapy to help you to get through that process a little bit faster. Some patients do medication for that period of time too to help them to get through that process, but it's situational. It's going to last for a period of time. Versus clinical depression. Clinical depression is going to be a lifelong mental health illness, and it's usually hereditary. So just like with our blood pressure, diabetes, and we have family members, and a lot of us have family members because the stigma associated with mental health who we didn't know. We knew that they were sad. We knew that they were withdrawn. We knew that they drank a lot, but we didn't know why or if they were ever diagnosed.
And they didn't talk about it.
And they didn't talk about it.
You just didn't talk
Kept
about
to
that.
yourself about it.
Yeah.
Yes. So clinical depression can kind of mimic a little bit of what you see situational, but it's more in depth. So you have periods of depression for at least a period of 2 weeks, and you're depressed pretty much that whole 2 weeks is where it starts. But it's the isolation, you have the depressed mood, and you have to have that lack of interest in doing anything. Like, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to talk to anybody, I don't want to go to work, and it starts to impact your daily living and your functioning.
Yeah, some people don't even want to take a
That's
bath.
what I was about to say.
Yeah,
They don't want to take a
their
bath,
personal
they don't
hygiene
wanna
is
eat.
affected.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you see weight loss, you may see weight gain because there may be a decrease in appetite, there may be an increase in appetite. The sleep, they may oversleep, so they might have hypersomnia versus insomnia where they sleeping too much or they're not sleeping at all. They're that restless sleep that you mentioned. Feeling fatigue all the time, memory, lack of trouble concentrating. And I get patients who come to me and they'll say, you know what, I think I have ADHD.
Yeah.
I can't focus, I'm forgetting stuff, and then we'll talk more and I'll assess them. And it's like, no, you meet the criteria for depression because people mistake because they can't concentrate or they're forgetting stuff that something's wrong with them or they're not focused, can't complete tasks, and really it's maybe depression or anxiety that they're experiencing. And another big part with clinical depression, what causes the imbalance is the neurotransmitters. We have neurotransmitters. And so there's a chemical imbalance. So when you're struggling with depression, a lot of times your body has a lack of serotonin. And serotonin.
Okay.
And serotonin is a neurotransmitter that gives us energy, that gives us pleasure, that makes us feel happy. And when we're lacking that serotonin, that's when that depression can kick in. And so when you ask that question about the medication, with that's why that medication is key, because that medication replaces
absolutely
that serotonin level so that you can be at that good place that you're looking to be at and have that energy to do the things you enjoy and live life.
Wow.
So,
So, Ms. Ziza, what can you add to that? That's clinical and situational.
She hit it on the head, and just talking about the differences. People would have probably said it was situational when I lost my mom, other than the fact that I had already been diagnosed as clinical.
Wow.
So it kind of made it bigger than it was, and you hear people say all the time, oh, it's going to be okay, you'll push through it. Well, I don't always want to wear a superwoman cape. You know, give me the opportunity. If you're going to ask me, am I okay? And I say no, well, you'll be okay. Just pray about it. That's not what I need. You know, I need someone who's really going to listen to me, because it may be a day I don't feel like getting out of bed. It may be, you know, I'm crying out for help. And so everything that Ashanti named, I've experienced. I've experienced the, you know, the weight loss where my sister said I looked like a bobblehead because I lost so much weight after my mom passed away. And it was just, you know, when I looked in the mirror, I was like, oh my God, you know, how am I a size 4 or 6? I've never been this small. I've been this size since I was in the 7th grade. You know, that's the toll it took on me. And I couldn't get out of the bed. And, you know, because my husband didn't always understand, I had to teach him.
Right.
You have to teach your loved ones, you know, what this is, because a lot of people don't understand it because we don't talk about it in the African American community.
Right.
So they may say, oh, she's just being lazy, or he's just being lazy. Why are those dishes still in the sink? You know, why your house look like this? Because you just don't have what it takes to get out of bed. You know, it's like have you ever felt like you were just drowning and you fighting your way to the surface, but no matter how much you fight, you just can't make it to the surface? And that's what depression feels like. No matter how hard you fight to get through those days. There was a point when I worked from home for so many years, I would literally go to sleep between meetings, or on my lunch break, I would go to sleep because I just did not have the energy. I was really faking it through the day. I would have to put on this face to, you know, get these tasks accomplished, and then I'd log off and I'd cry, and I wouldn't even know what I'm crying for. It's like, what's wrong? You know, why are you crying? Or my son would say, what's wrong, Mom? You try to hide it, and you just can't.
Right.
And so everything that Ashanti said is absolutely true.
I kind of use an analogy with a lot of patients. It's like you're in a boxing ring,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to get knocked out. You're going that round.
Mm-hmm.
And then here comes that knockout,
Mm-hmm.
and it knocks you down, and you're down for a little bit. But then you find that you mustered up that energy over time to get back up and fight that next round.
Yeah.
But you're gonna get knocked down. And I tell patients that because they may be doing well for months,
Yeah.
for years, period of time, and then they're knocked down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why am I down again? You know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I've been using my skills. It's a part of that journey. It's a part of that cycle, and you're gonna get knocked down. But understanding what you mentioned earlier, your triggers.
Yeah.
Knowing what your triggers and what your signs look like,
Yeah.
and what because everyone's depression is not cookie cutter.
Right.
So knowing what your depression look like, what are warning signs to let you know, okay, I'm headed down that path.
Yeah.
And then that's where that toolbox comes in, and you
Yeah.
start using those skills and strategies that you've learned over the course of time to implement.
Yeah.
And when talking about that too, I want to always make sure I distinguish for men, because there's a lot of misunderstanding for men when it comes to depression. And so a lot of those symptoms that we identify are very common for men too. But in men with depression, a lot of times that's where you'll see that anger,
Yeah.
the rage,
Yeah.
extreme irritability with both, but with men it looks different. They're angry, that rage, and that substance use.
Yeah.
Most individuals who have a substance abuse diagnosis or dealing with the alcohol or drug use have an underlying depression or trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder
Yeah.
that goes along with it. And so understanding that in your boys, your young adults, your young boys, and your men, if you're seeing that, it may not be that they're angry.
Yeah.
They don't realize that they angry all the time because they're struggling with depression and that they have never had treated.
Yeah.
So understanding what those signs look like for men
Yeah.
with depression.
And I often tell, because I have 3 sons, you know, having, first of all, black men anyway, you know, giving birth to black men, and then they have to be raised in this country,
Right.
or, you know, they walk out and society sees them as one way, and we know the loving people that they are. I would always tell my husband, we're going to raise our kids to be in touch with the vulnerability. We're not going to raise our children to say, oh, man up. Absolutely
Yes.
not, because my generation and the generation before that, nobody gave them permission to be vulnerable.
Right,
Nobody,
right.
they had to be the providers.
Right.
They had to put on this armor. And when they walked out the door, they had to deal with not only what's going on at home, but everything that's going
Right.
outside
Right.
that
Yes.
affects them daily. I mean, look at the police brutality
Right.
and the, being profiled just for being, a black man. And so they deal with those things every single day. And I tell my children and my husband, home is your safe place. So if you have to cry, cry.
Let it
If you need your
out.
mom to hug you, tell me you need a hug. Because what was important for me is I know what I deal with, right? And it's, like you said, it's hereditary. But I wanted to make sure my men in my family know that it's okay to hurt. It's okay to be tired and frustrated and stressed out. But when you hold that in, that's where that anger comes from.
Right, exactly.
Because they don't feel like they have
They
a
don't-
voice.
exactly. Or
And
the
so-
alcohol comes in because they don't
Absolutely.
know how to express it any other way. So they drown it with the
Absolutely.
alcohol or
So it's very important to tell our men that it's okay to take that armor off.
it's okay to take the
It's
armor
okay to
off.
take that armor
And
off.
as a man, the only man in the room tonight, it's okay. So listen, we got some interesting questions. One of them, to piggyback off what you were just saying. Question is asked, just in general, if I'm feeling sad, can I pop a serotonin pill to feel happy? Is it addictive?
No, no.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. So typically when you're struggling with depression, you're prescribed an antidepressant. They are not addictive. They don't become addictive until you're dealing with benzostimulants, which are not used to treat depression. So absolutely not. They're not addictive at all. No.
Okay, now this one piggybacks off of what you made mention of on Sunday. I remember, because I was even shocked by this, you said that 1 in every 5 persons, there's somebody that's dealing with mental illness.
Yes.
And so a question in the chat was, is it true that everyone has a little touch of
You don't want me to answer. Don't let me answer it. Don't let me
Is
answer
it true that everybody has a little touch of a mental condition?
You know what?
That's
it's real,
funny,
though,
but
but
right,
it's real.
that's an
Yeah.
interesting question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it sounds like at some point,
At some point.
we all deal with some type of depression. You know, I
Absolutely.
mean,
Whether
so
it's situational.
that's funny, but
Yeah.
but it's that's interesting.
It is, but it is real. And so, yes and no, okay? So there's a difference, again, when we were talking about the situational. I think we all have gone through, or 99% of us,
Yeah.
if you haven't, you will go through it at some point. You've gone through a period of a situational situation where you had that depression, that
Yeah,
anxiety.
yeah.
Just think back to
I
this
agree.
last year.
Oh.
I can tell you personally, my anxiety, which I've had to implement and use a lot of skills I teach folks, my anxiety has gone up with just the at-home learning, the working from home, the patient case. So life has shifted. Depression since
Wow.
it. So yes, I think everyone kind of has, if we want to say a touch of something, the difference would be we all have things,
Yeah.
but do you meet the full clinical diagnosis for a more pervasive mental health diagnosis? And so we have our DSM, which is in our mental health world, is our Bible. For mental health and diagnosing. And so we use that when we clinically diagnose somebody with a diagnosis. You have to meet certain criteria. So like even with that depression, when you have clinical depression, major depression disorder is what we call it, you have to have that depressed mood and you have to have that lack of energy and that lack of motivation to do things, along with 2 to 3 of the other things that I mentioned earlier. So there's certain things that you have to meet. They look at me as silly in the
Listen,
chat.
okay, do you know Lawrence Wheaton?
Oh, that's my brother. Or my dad. Either my brother or my
No, he
dad.
said, I'm a Shanti's dad.
That's my dad.
She said, I'm a little touched. That's why I started.
He's very touched. He's very touched. I think I can clinically diagnose him.
She said, you are clinically diagnosed. You are very touched.
I can. He's touched. He's
Oh,
touched.
wow. I'm sorry, that threw me off when I saw it. I'm like, what a dad.
That's my dad. Yeah, he's touched. He's very
Wow.
touched.
Yeah.
So now here's an interesting question that we were talking about earlier, and I think both of you addressed it. But the question is asked: finding the right therapist.
Yes.
And it was a confirmation because you talked about that on Sunday. I don't know if you saw her presentation, but she talked about that when you're seeking that help, it may take a few times where you go through different therapists, and then you said it again tonight.
Yeah.
And so someone in the chat says, finding the right therapist if you are already in a fragile mental state. How can you muster up the additional strength, patience, and faith to find the right therapist? More frustration, the
It is
last straw.
difficult.
That's
It is
Wow,
difficult.
interesting. Wow,
It
that's
is
good.
very difficult because I will say, after all those life events, I was in one of the darkest places I've ever been. And the only thing I could say is, okay, God, you got to do some work because I can't do this. All this medicine, I had the perfect cocktail, okay? Because
Wow.
I went to a therapist that wouldn't ask me, how I was. They would say, well, just what prescriptions do you need? You have those therapists out there that they're trying to meet their prescription quota. They have their
mercy.
people coming in, their representatives pushing these pills. The
Right.
pharmaceutical industry is a big business.
Right.
Yep.
So it's like, what prescription do you need? I'm like, okay, I need some of this.
Need to hear.
It is, wait, I just asked you for something that's not even in my file. You're it's like a ticking time bomb. Someone who's really in a bad place can go in there and ask for anything, and they'll just write the prescription. So I would sit in my car and cry after those appointments. And I was at the point where I was like, I'm just going to give up because I can't find the person, and I'm on the borderline of losing
You
it.
already don't have the energy
You
or feel like
don't.
doing it.
And I was like, I can't do this. And it was so funny. I was at work one day, and I said, I have to. If I don't find someone, it's not going to be good. Like, I was there. I seen the suicide prevention commercials, but I was there. And I called the office to talk to a new therapist, and it was like, oh, well, her appointment's out 6 months. And I'm like, 6 months? I don't think I have 6 months. And so she's like, well, you can talk to the nurse practitioner. No, I want the doctor. I wanted the doctor. And about a day later, I was like, I can't wait for the doctor. I have to call back, and I'll just see the nurse practitioner to start off with. 6 years later, I'm still going to her.
Wow.
She took her time with me, and I was at the end of my rope, barely holding on. I was like, you're going to have to help me, God, because I have nothing left.
Right.
I come from a background that's not been easy, but my husband and I, we're partners, and we have made a wonderful life for our family. So on the outside, everybody sees, oh, she's fine, they have X, Y, and Z.
On the outside.
Outside. But when I come home at night, I'm sitting in my shower crying,
Right,
trying to
you wear that
drown out the
mask on, they
tears.
call.
Right, and so I had to find someone. I had to ask for a little help, and that's where my faith came in. It was like, okay, I already hit bottom. I can't go any lower, so God, you're going to have to pick me up out of this and help me to make that phone call. And it was just a matter of choosing life or death. And it was really a choice. Either I can sit here and have this nervous breakdown and die, or I can muster up a little bit of energy to pick up the phone and dial that number one more time to see if somebody on the other line can help me.
Wow. Go right ahead.
And I always tell people too, and patients when they feel like it's not a good match, you have to tell your therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand that this is a working relationship.
Yeah.
It's give and take, and also you have to understand that relationship that you're building and that trusting relationship. So it is okay to tell them, you know what, I don't feel like we're connecting, or I don't feel like I'm getting what I need from you. Because sometimes as therapists, we may think we're doing the right thing. We know what you need. Oh, this is what you're dealing with. No.
Yeah.
And so we think that we're giving you what you need, but only you know if you're receiving what you need. So
And can I to speak on that? And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of times patients help the therapist when they're honest.
yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And I think that's key.
Yes.
When you go to a therapist or a counselor, you gotta be honest.
You got to tell the whole
Right,
story.
Because in order for them, to help, you
We
gotta
gotta
be
know.
honest.
You have
Right.
to.
We don't know.
Right.
We're not the mind readers. We don't know what's
Yeah.
going on, what you lived through. Yeah, you have to be able to share that with us because that guides
Right.
the
And you-
treatment
and you
that
get
you
out of it what you
receive,
put
and
in
you
it.
get out of it. We do not. People sometimes come to therapy and say, "Fix me."
and don't know what they need to fix.
Right.
And
Because you won't be honest.
And
right.
we're not fixers.
Right.
Our job
Wow.
is to help to guide you
Wow.
to make the best decision for
We're not
yourself.
fixers.
We're not
Wow.
fixers. We'll give you tools, but it's up to you to use those tools. We'll guide you. We'll give you feedback. We're not going to tell you what to do, because one thing that I know I've learned is patients that I tell what to do don't follow through with it
Don't
as
follow
much.
through.
Yeah.
If they
Wow.
do something that has worked for them or that they're willing to try, you have longer lasting effects. And I always tell patients, my job is to work myself out of a job.
Right.
My job is for you to sometimes
Work
get
out
to
of
out
a
of
job.
a job, for you get to a place where you come in and say, you know what, you're
Right.
fired.
Right.
Right.
Do any work.
And
You
don't
can't-
just be popping random serotonin
right,
pills.
right,
you know?
right.
But the demographic that has the hardest time, and not to beat up on you men, but it's the
No,
men.
it's
the
true.
men.
That-
It is
that's
the
true.
men,
That's true.
because when
Yeah.
they sit in front of a therapist, they don't want to show themselves.
Well, and it's like you said earlier, it's that armor. You
Yes.
gotta take it off.
You have to take it off.
That's true. So we kind of out of time, because I normally like to hold, about 40, 45 minutes. This is very interesting. So I see some other things in here that I promise you we'll pick up next week, especially, and I want y'all to write it down, make a mental note of it. Somebody asked a question about hearing voices.
Yes.
And so we'll definitely, and the reason why I don't want to get into it tonight, but we can pick it up there next week, because I want to do exactly what we promised on our Jennifer number 3, and that's to give you some strategies. Because again, I don't want you to walk away. Both Mrs. Shanti and Miss McMillan have given us wonderful information, but I want them to spend about 3 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes apiece, whatever strategies you want to give, because somebody may be just like she was, you at the end. You at the end. So give us some strategies,
Yeah.
real quick.
Sure. You want to, okay. So a couple of things as far as, and I like to distinguish too, because having someone to speak to is always great. Your mental health check-in is just like your physical check-in. Sometimes you just
Wow.
need somebody to
Wow.
check in with to make sure that this is working well up here. Because sometimes we don't know what else to do, but there's always another solution. You just can't think of it, but somebody can help you to think of another way. But you got to check in mentally, because it all works together. As well as, I like to distinguish between therapy and psychiatry and psychology. So I
Yeah.
think that's important. So when we say, find somebody to speak to, understanding the difference. So a licensed professional counselor or a social worker, those are counselors. Those are who's going to help you to problem solve, work through trauma, work through depression, work through whatever you're dealing with. And then there's psychiatrists. Psychiatrists typically prescribe that medication, but there are a lot of psychiatrists who will do both. They do dabble into psychotherapy as well. And then psychologists, they do testing. So if you're looking to get tested to figure out certain things, they do more of the testing realm. And some of them as well cross over into doing some therapy too. So understanding what you're looking for when you're looking for a provider. But when we talked about depression, again, I mentioned this on Sunday, but it is important to have a balanced meal, to eat balanced meals, that exercise. And we're not saying go do a boot camp and things like that. But,
Oh, thank God.
but walking, getting out to walk, because again,
Right.
that physical and that mental, it all works
It helps.
together. It helps a lot to balance off that serotonin as
Yeah.
well, to give your body something positive and good to feed off of. Having somebody to talk to, whether it's a close family member or friend, somebody that you trust, it's having somebody in your corner, and also just being open to trying new things, figuring out what you enjoy doing, incorporating something that you enjoy doing, and living that best life. And I'm just lost something, y'all. It was something important too, and I just lost what I was gonna say. It may come back to me. It may not come back to me. But I'll pass it over. Come back to me. I'll pop back in.
Okay. When I think about strategy, I first of all would say it's okay not to be okay.
Yes.
When you acknowledge that you're not okay, that's when the doors open
Admit
for
it.
help.
Admit it.
Yeah, it's like a 12-step program.
Yep.
You know what I'm
Admit
saying?
you got a
You
problem.
have to admit that something is not right, that you're feeling off, that Now, I'm not telling you to self-diagnose.
Don't
Please,
go
please,
Google.
please don't go to WebMD
Don't go to
and
WebMD.
diagnose yourself.
Right.
But if you're feeling
Wow.
like something is, people do it all the
They do
time.
all the time.
I'm like,
Medical.
well, they've been on WebMD. Now, my son
Wow.
went on WebMD. He's like, Ma, I got a stomach ulcer. I was like, where you get that from? He was like, sir, I had to take him to the pediatrician
Right.
to make sure, to confirm for him that he didn't have
Yes.
one, because he'd been on Google. Do not self-diagnose. When you recognize that you're not your authentic self, you have to say, you know what, something's off. You have to admit that. And once you do, like Ashanti said, find somebody that you can really confide in, because once you say it out loud, it makes it real.
Right.
What I've learned is, as long as I don't say it, it's not real. So when you say it to someone else, not just to yourself, but when you say it to someone else, it makes it really real.
Right.
And make sure you're saying it to somebody that's listening to your heart, that will look you in the eye and say, you know what, something is not okay. You know, what can I do to help? And when people say, oh, I'm there for if you need me, that don't always mean they're there if you need them. So find that person who, when they say that to you, you understand that you can go to them and say, I need help.
No judgment.
No judgment.
No judgment.
I
love
need
it.
help.
I
And
love
it's,
it.
what do you
No
need?
judgment.
Can you help me find someone to talk to?
Right.
That's my strategy, because I've been there, and you know, I didn't always have the answers, and I probably did self-diagnose myself a couple times. I'm like, but is this really what this is? It wasn't until my mom loved me enough to listen to me when I told her that I wasn't okay at 16. And at 16, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, because I knew I could tell my mom anything, and she loved me enough not to brush it off. So you have to find that person or persons who really see your heart and see that, you know, she's not okay. Let me see how I can help. Whether it's making a phone call for you or reaching out to someone and say, hey, I know this person, without giving out your information. What resources can I give them? And it's worked for me, and it's worked for people that I talk to, because I experienced it. People are comfortable coming to me saying, you know, Ziza, I know you can't diagnose me, but can you point me in the direction that I need to go, because I've been sleeping too much, or I haven't had an appetite, you know, my work is affected, you know. People see you at work and you're getting a write-up, but they don't know behind the scenes that you can't even make it. You're barely making it. So just surround yourself with people who genuinely care about you, and when you say you're not okay, they will listen to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what was that strategy? You said you got it.
No, ruminating thoughts. That's why I said it was a big one. Get out your own head.
Ooh, don't stay in there.
Don't stay in
Especially
your
if we all a little
head.
touched.
Yes, right.
If we all a little touched.
We create stuff.
Yeah.
We maybe feed into those negative thoughts. And I know we don't have time to talk about it, but those self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
Where we tell ourselves something over and over again, and we start to internalize it. I'm
That
not
manifestation.
good enough. Yes, and it becomes how we see each other.
Yeah.
And that beats on us and creates that depression, or that, like someone was saying, get out of your head. Unless it's telling you and you're being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Right,
But
right.
don't sit with that negativity.
Right.
It's very important.
And that's amazing as I prepare to close out, because that's one of the points that I covered on Sunday.
Yes.
I talked about ruminating thoughts, but it's having the right thoughts.
Right.
Thinking on things that are just, thinking on things that are pure, thinking on things that are honest. Basically, positive thoughts.
Positive thoughts.
Get that negativity out of your head. And so the strategies they gave us: do not self-diagnose. You know, it's okay, admit it.
Yeah.
You know, if something is going on with you, admit it. Number two, you know, have a check-in, a mental check-in. Find somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to. And I love what Ms. McMillan said, that can see your heart. You know, mental check-in, balanced meals. You know, that's so key. Exercise, you know, already you got to do a boot camp. Y'all heard that? But just get out and walk. I like to say, get some fresh air.
Fresh air.
You know, just get out and walk, get you some fresh air. Be open to new things. I like that. Because that shows that you're at least trying to progress and moving forward, you know, as we've been talking about. And then, of course, stay out of those negative thoughts. You know, those ruminating thoughts that are negative, stay out of those thoughts. This has been very, very informative, you know, very, very interesting. We got people that are commenting. This is not the last night. that we're going to do it. As a matter of fact, somebody said they hate that they missed the first 30 minutes, but we're talking directly to them.
Yeah.
Well, you can go back and look at it. You can share it, and we will continue on next week because we're going to be, talking more to our younger people, I believe. To our teenagers, to our children, to our next generation, because they need this.
Yeah.
They need it. And so one of the things that I want to do right before we close out, there should be some information on your screen because the entire conversation really opened with the statement that Ms. Ziza made, make the conscious effort to seek help. Make the conscious effort to seek help. Y'all know I've been around Mount Nebo for 2 years now, and I believe that if ministry is going to be effective, it has to be relevant.
Right.
And so what we've been doing, Mrs. Shanti and I kind of bounced it, several times, is starting a mental health ministry here in our church. Yes, the Bible is needed, but I like to say it this way. Some people are so heavenly minded until they're no earthly good.
Right.
And, as we say, we can pray, but God has given us resources to help us in the natural. And so this ministry is designed, I said on Sunday, we're a tripartite being. I'm a spiritual being. I live inside of a physical body, and I possess a soul. And I think they both kind of hit on it tonight. We pay so much attention to the outside. And, we go to the gym to work out, to get our physical, our physique ready. But what about your mentality? What about your soulish realm? What about making sure that you're good mentally? And so just to go back to where we started, make the conscious effort to seek help. It's right there on the screen. You can email Nebo mentalhealth@gmail.com, or you can call 470-782-1924. I promise you, it is secure. It is you can trust us. Your information will not be shared. I don't even want to know. As a matter of fact, we had some people to respond, to what we did on Sunday, and we're setting up an office right here in our church because whomever it was, they want to be able to come and sit and talk. We're gonna set up a space, a safe space for you to get the help that you need. Because again, we all know that mental illness is real, and it's something that's happening. 1 in every 5 persons.
That's a lot.
When Mrs. Shanti told me that, I got scared because I'm like, well, I live in a house. There's 5 of us, so somebody. My whole family probably say it's probably you. but get the help, and we're offering the help. Family members, friends. You don't have to be a member of Mount Nebo. It's not about that. It's about getting the help that you need so that you can be okay, so you can get to that place where you're okay. And we're here to do that. So the information is on the screen. I want to again thank Ms. McMillan and of course our very own Mr. Shanti for joining me tonight. We were gonna try to put it off next week. But we flipped it, and I am so grateful that you all decided to do the follow-up from my message and what we did on Sunday.
Absolutely.
I say,
Thank you for
what,
having
we
me.
can't, I don't want this to wait. I want us to dive right into this. And so we'll be back next week. Get your children, because they're going to be sharing some things as it relates to our children, making sure that they're good. Give us the information how we can get, it's right there on the screen. If you want any of her material, Ms. McMillan's materials on the screen, just go to her website, ZIZAMCMILLAN.com, and you can get this book, and you can get the journal. Is $65.
Yes, for both
and
of
of
us.
course, I've already told her I'm going to buy up so many. She can give them away, or I'll give them away. But don't wait on me to do it. I'm going to wait to see a pastor give me one. No, don't wait on me to do it. If you need it, go on there and get it. Let's support our sister. Let's support our own.
Yeah.
She's not a member of our church,
part of us.
Right, but
Yeah.
she's part of us. She's family. She's a part of one of my closest friends' church. I ain't gonna call his name, but I told you he's one of my favorite preachers.
Yeah.
But she's a part of us. She's a part of our family, and we want to support her work
Thank you
and
so
what
much.
she's doing. But join us next week. Ladies and gentlemen, join us next week because we're gonna take it to another level. I'm excited about it. Ladies, thank you. Anything as we
absolutely.
close? Anything y'all want to
I
share?
just want to share, I know someone had a question about hearing voices. If you have questions that you feel cannot wait until next time,
Absolutely.
please feel free to send those via email or to call in, and I'll be sure to try to get back with you as soon as possible with the responses. to those
Absolutely.
questions.
Thank you. Yeah.
One
thank you for
question that I had, is there any way to capture the questions that we did not get to?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And
Okay.
I think our worship and arts director.
Okay.
I think she's going through capturing all of those.
Okay.
But we will, if we didn't get to it tonight,
Yeah.
especially with the hearing voices, email, call, and anything that we didn't get to tonight, we'll make sure we cover it next week. Or if you have some questions throughout the week and you want to hear them answered, or post them or whatever, don't be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Notice I didn't call anybody's name
Right.
that sent a question in. So you don't have to, be embarrassed or ashamed. There is no stupid question.
No.
The only stupid question is one that goes unasked.
Yeah.
And so, and your question could help somebody else. And so make sure that you do that. But again, to our Mount Nebo family and for all of you that watch, I won't go through my list tonight of calling out, giving people shout outs, but I want to give one shout out, and that's to my main man, Felipe. Before we even started talking, he had hand claps. In the comment section, because that's right, he was
Good job.
supporting his wife, and I'm big on that. And so I will shout him out tonight. He had hand claps going all the way down the screen. That's right. And then
That's right, good job.
And then her father is on. Brother Lawrence Wheaton, now Junior, is that dad or
That's
brother?
dad.
Oh, that's her dad on Great Ministry. Pastor, thank you so very much for watching. But I appreciate all of you. I thank God for you. I know I've gone over my time tonight, but I think it was well worth it. I think it's well worth it. Join us next week for our Wednesday Refuel at 7 p.m. We'll be right back here. Either we'll be at this table or around some table somewhere, making sure that you get the information that you need. But again, if you need help now, email or call the number that's on the screen. Because
And just know.
yeah, there it is. Let us know.
Mental health matters.
That's right.
Health
Mental
matters.
health. I
That's
like
right.
that. Mental health matters.
Yeah.
That's right. Mental health matters, and we want to make sure that we're all good. Because we found out tonight, we all been touched with some type of depression. And as they were talking, I promise I'm gone, but as they were talking, I thought about a time where I had situational depression and didn't know it. But just listening to our discussion tonight, I'm like, okay, I remember when I was there and didn't know it. And so now I know, and if I slip back down, oh, y'all better believe I'm getting help. Because, so we're all in it together.
All in.
That's right.
Listen, I love every last one of you. I really do. I appreciate it. We're on 2 platforms, Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you share it. Make sure you share this because this is information that is definitely needed. So make sure you share it. I'm going to close with a word of prayer. And, of course, we're going to leave the information up on the screen that you can share or that you can email and call because I want you to get help. Let's pray. Father, in Jesus' name, we're so grateful and thankful tonight for these 2 wonderful gifts that you've placed in the body of Christ. God, we thank you for the information that they poured out unto us. We pray and we thank you, oh God, that it was received. We thank you, oh God, that someone's life has been changed, that someone has been set free. And for those that have listened, those that watch, that need help, we thank you, dear God, that you give them enough strength and enough power to keep pressing forward and to email or to call or to get the help that they need. God, we thank you on tonight for this time of sharing. We thank you on tonight that we shall all be stable mentally, that we shall walk in mental wellness in the name of Jesus. Thank you for our time together. We thank you, dear God, as always, that no plague shall come to our dwelling place. You give angels charge over our lives. We thank you that we shall not die, but we shall live to declare your works. In Jesus' name, amen. I love every last one of you. Have a blessed and a prosperous week. Peace.
Right.
I don't think we should be good.